Welcome Neal over here at We Share Fest. Neal from Shareable. Tell us about Shareable. What is it?
Shareable is a non-profit. Our mission is to empower everyone to share for a more joyous, resilient, and equitable world. And we have two programs. We're most known for our online magazine that's almost a 5-year anniversary coming up. It's coming up in October. We have the largest audience on the topic of sharing, on the largest collection of how to share articles on the web. And then we also do community organizing. We've convened since we launched in 2009, but we've taken it to the next level recently and launched the Sharing Cities Network, which is our goal is by 2015 is to launch 100 local sharing movements around the world.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
And now you say 5 years. What happened in the first year? How did you start with the idea of Shareable, and how did you manage to get through the first year? Can you share also some lessons?
Yeah, sure. So when we started out, our idea was, the question was, how do we start a sharing movement? And then my background is in research and strategy, and I started digging in, and I'm like, very persistent researcher. I want to get the answer and the real picture. And when I dug in, what I saw was, whoa, there is this thing underneath the surface that's about to break out, and it's much bigger than anyone thinks, and it cuts across all these industries, and sharing and openness kind of tie it all together. And so we don't need to start a sharing movement. We need to point a spotlight on it and connect the dots and show that something that has a lot of potential for equity and sustainability is about to emerge, and to engage people in that and turn it into something that we need it to become. And so we launched Shareable, the online magazine about sharing. That was the first step.
Okay.
Yeah, and at first, it was like, hello, anyone there?
Uh-huh.
And it was hard to get writers and partners, and but slowly, surely, we built up a network of partner sites and authors, and we were, being early later became a source of credibility and authority. Yeah. And so now we're, though we struggle at first, now dividends are paying some dividends.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And you say we, who is we in the start?
Right, so in the beginning, I had there's a whole kind of backstory that you can get on Shareable about how I got started in sharing and creating a life and a career around sharing starting in 2004, right? And all that activity led up to launching Shareable with the Shift Foundation. It's a family foundation in Florida, Will Watman, a consultant that worked for them, and then Free Range Graphics in Berkeley, California. We formed a team to kind of study this and come up with a plan. Yeah. And then I was part of that, and then they asked me to lead it out.
Okay, great. Yeah. And you say we had a plan, and at what way did you realize the plan? Like, what's your business model?
Right. Yeah. So it's a nonprofit, and we're funded by foundations, corporate sponsors, and individual donors, our readers and community members, and the mix is 70. 15-15 kind of roughly, and still relying on foundation grants. But the plan is to have our community be the main funders and creators of the project, right? And we're moving towards that. We could move faster, I think. I'd like to, but it's actually difficult. So it's a challenging thing. All the tools aren't there, and you have to kind of iterate and get to that point. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, but I think speed isn't the only the most important thing, because at the end you want a sustainable growth.
Right.
So I think that's the most important one. And when you look at next year, what can we expect from Shareable?
Yeah, so we're really focusing on our Sharing Cities networks and bringing our content and our community organizing together into a cohesive whole. So we've learned that having a big audience and community organizing, this can be a very synergistic relationship, that you can kind of come up with an action with a community to do a sort of campaign, and then someone does it, and then you report about it, and then other people see it and they want to join, and so you can really build momentum that way, and that's worked out great. For instance, we've this spring, we call it the Sharing Spring, so hashtag Sharing Spring. And we've asked, or come up with this idea to do ShareFests on the network, and 35 teams from around the world are doing big public festivals showcasing sharing innovations where they live. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, really great. And what is your big dream for Shareable? Like, say, okay, when you could make one wish, what would it be?
Yeah, that this becomes a global people-powered movement and a alternative to living in the market economy, like a viable alternative long-term for people. They can make a choice, and they can be part of one or the other or both, but it becomes totally viable to even live without money as we know it now.
Yeah, there's also people saying that working for money in 50 years is something people think, what were they doing? So that's, yes, it's really great.
It could be odd. It could be, you could be an oddity if you're in 50 years if you're working for money, right?
Yeah, that's full. And you're really enthusiastic about the sharing and a collaborative economy. Why? Well, from what comes your passion for this new economy or this?
It comes, two things. First, I'm an analyst and an observer, and I see something really important happening that the world and people need, but also from personal experience. So I've dove in personally, a practitioner in my own life, and it's completely changed my life and made it into something that is just, you can't measure how much better it is. It's like it's a step function better. It's beyond what I can imagine. When you move from basing your activities on a form of wealth based on money to one based on relationships, then you have to be careful about your goals because they may be too modest, right? And things like Wikipedia, you could never imagine that they could happen, right? And we have to, I think, as a species, reset our expectations of what's possible, think outside of what we think is viable, and swing for the fences and go for the impossible. Like these are the times that we live in, is we've got to go for the impossible, and because we're hyper-connected, and because we're in many ways more empowered individuals than ever in history, like there are new potentialities that we haven't fully explored yet. So it's the time to swing for the fences. That's how I think.
That's clear that you're already energetic about it. And one way, because one of the dangers of being really enthusiastic about something is that you only talk to people who are really enthusiastic about it. So what do you do to prevent that you start living in a bubble with people who are only enthusiastic about the new economy, and that you forget about the people who don't give a nothing? Right.
So we're not at risk of that now because we're still a small community, we want to bring this into the mainstream, and so the way we communicate about it, or the way we attempt to, we don't always succeed, is a way that, meet people where they are with the language they speak, as much as possible, right? And talk about the practical benefits and also the things that really work today that are proven and defy expectations. Like, and also talk about it in a way that, like, people are thinking about, they have a need, and okay, so you have this need. Well, here's some possible option for you, right?
Yeah.
So meet them where they're feeling pain or need.
Yeah, I think that's also the best thing to do, is that focus on the need and not on just the sharing part. It's the same like with sustainability. I talked to Christian van Koenigsegg. He makes Koenigsegg, the cars that cost about €1.5 million, and he said being green, how say it in English? It's not okay if you focus on being green as a handicap, because when he wants to make a sustainable motor, it doesn't have to be bigger or making more noise or more expensive, but it's about how to find a solution of something that needs of people.
Right, exactly. And this is, the thing about sharing is, that we try to put in front and center is there's a moral dimension, but there's also this the practical dimension, and there is this almost spiritual dimension, is that it connects people in a way that is empowering, and in a way that we can help each other realize their potential. It unlocks people's creative potential, and because we're moving more towards a knowledge society and a creative economy, like, this is a really important message.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And when you're looking, because Then I've got my question, of course. Because there's lots of new initiatives about the collaborative and sharing economy. What do you think has to happen to make it a sustainable model? Because the first speaker of today, he said, okay, just focus on the idea and the business model. Don't worry about that. But I've seen too many startups fail on long term because I think when you talk about value, money is part of it, of course, but there's all different kind of value. But what do you think has to change to make the sharing economy on long term a sustainable model?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things is that if you're talking about creating an enterprise, is that it helps people share on the platform, but also the wealth that's created is shared among those who are creating the value, whether it's employees or users, right? So how do we share decision making and wealth creation across the board?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a really nice time we're living in. It's really cool. And
I agree.
And our first team of private edition, because every 3 months we are focusing another team. The first team is mobility. What do you see the future of mobility in the sharing economy? Can you share something?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there are multiple scenarios, but there is one around automobile and car sharing, and really the idea, especially like in the United States, we have Google that's working on autonomous cars, right? I mean, it's legal in California and Nevada, and the technology works, and so the potential is that highways and streets and cities route cars, or cars are routed on that network the way that packets are routed on the internet. And so in a real-time dynamic way, responding to the capacity challenges. And we could go from a regime in car sharing where it's one shared car replaces 13 owned cars to one where it might be 1 to 100 or 1 to 200, right? And so what we do is it becomes radically more sustainable, and importantly, frees up, a tremendous amount of space in cities for people, because cities, we should think about them as places for people to live and make their lives together, right?
Yeah.
Not as merely markets and something to house and accommodate cars.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And if you talk about connecting the new and the old economy,
right?
Do you think big corporations will make the switch to the new? Will there be big corporations in, let's say, 40 years? Let's take it easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's whoever is the, if there's a gold rush, there's those going for the gold, and there's those that are providing the tools. And oftentimes the ones that are providing the tools are the ones that make out. And so the platform providers could be the big corporations, and they already are, take the Etsy's and the Airbnb's. These are multi-billion-dollar enterprises now, right? And I think the bigger question for us as an organization is like, can we, not the size, but how the wealth and decision making is distributed, right? So can we have a fair Airbnb, for instance, where instead of replicating the power and wealth asymmetries we already see in society with the way shareholding decision making is centralized in a company like Airbnb, what about one where the users and employees and other stakeholders work together to create an enterprise that can last, is not looking for a fast exit, but they're looking to do something over the long term, decades and centuries, and to provide the most value for society and for everyone that's helping build it.
Yeah. As you see, because I did a trip, brand expedition, I've talked to 20 leaders of big European brands, and I also talked to lots of family companies. And the last thing you said, that's really a typical asset of family companies. They're really looking at long-term, adding value for everybody, and it's a complete different thing than the stock-owned companies.
Yeah, the Silicon Valley model, which that we can see that Silicon Valley startup model now as archaic, and that I think that they are the new dinosaurs, and the ones that figure out how to share value will be the new upstarts.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And we're going as part of Vision. We have started 4 days ago, and next 2 years we're going to talk to about 100 different companies all over the world, and also to different experts. what are you most curious about the outcome of crowd acquisition and all these interviews? And at what way can we help Shareable with our interviews?
Yeah, I mean, look for, I would look for two things, right? Things that work and proven, have been around but no one knows about, that can be replicated easily in communities around the world. And also look for the truly transformative innovations, the things that would work at systemic change, like new currencies, for instance. Right.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And see you in next time.
Yeah,
Okay,
nice to meet you, Marty. Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you.